What was one of your favorite bands growing up? Well, if you're like me and you grew up in the mid-90s or the mid-2000s and you're just absorbing music, obviously you were a Green Day fan. Growing up, Green Day was one of my favorite bands until I was about 18 or so, and I started to kind of fall out of love with them. Mind you, it had nothing to do with their politics. I mean, I knew they were heavily left-leaning. Now, it had to do with a certain life situation where I just couldn't quite listen to them the same after that. But even so, here we are, many years after American Idiots come out, and when they change lyrics to make them about Donald Trump and Trump supporters, yeah, it's got a bit of a cringe factor that rubs you the wrong way, kind of no matter what side of the aisle you're on, if you think about it critically. Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idle, and yeah, this article only serves to show you that rich and successful individuals in the entertainment industry are not who you should be taking your political lessons from. It only goes to show how ill-informed they are. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button as we get into this. Green Day changes lyric to hit out at Trump in New Year's Eve performance. Channels like mine are really the only channels where you're going to get true free speech in nerd culture, and I aim to keep it that way, my channel and channels like mine, so hit those buttons while we go through articles like these to keep you guys informed on the news and what you should really be knowing when it comes to nerd culture and how that influences politics. Rock band Green Day altered the lyrics of their well-known song, American Idiot, to criticize Donald Trump during a televised New Year's Eve performance. During a set on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve, the lead singer, Billy Joe Armstrong, replaced the line, "I'm not a part of a redneck agenda," with, "I'm not a part of a MAGA agenda." The song was originally released to criticize former President George Bush in 2004. You know, in that same song, he uses the terminology, maybe I'm the F slur about gay people, America, you know, maybe I'm the maggot America, but replace that with a word that starts with F. I wonder if they changed that lyric. I mean, it would be really amazing if, to pander to the left-leaning ideologues, he changed redneck to MAGA, but still left in the homo slur. Like, I'm sure they changed that as well, being 2023, but it's quite funny. People also seem to forget that in the 2009 album, 21st Century Breakdown, they full-on hard R. There's a lyric that says just a bunch of N-words throwing gas onto the hysteria. And, like, again, Billy Joe hard R's it. So I truly am curious as to how Green Day can be just like openly accepted in this left bubble when they've said and done such egregious things as that, which should actually get them canceled by today's standards. But I guess they're grandfathered in because they made a whole album criticizing the George W. Bush administration. Green Day fans flocked to social media to share the live performance during the New Year's Eve event with host Ryan Seacrest. This isn't the first time the band has targeted Trump. The rock band previously scorned the former president at the American Music Awards in 2016, responded to Trump's indictment in August with limited edition merchandise featuring his mugshot. Well, I'm pretty sure Trump beat you to that, or I know certain political pundits like Tim Pool did, and like, anyone who was wearing a Trump mugshot, most of them were doing it with irony because they thought it was so cool. You know, it was the same way that you could buy, like, you know, the mugshots at Jimi Hendrix. It was like, yeah, we're sticking it to the man. And that's the funny part about this. Blink-182, Green Day, they fancy themselves a punk rock band. They call themselves punk rock. They don't even like being called pop punk, despite the fact that, if anything, that's exactly what they are. Nah, they call themselves a punk rock band, and here they are just, you know, fighting for the government, saying, hey, yeah, we love you, Big Daddy government, don't like Donald Trump. You know, they tell the story. If anyone knows the history of Green Day, they grew up in a pretty impoverished, part of California. They grew up not with a whole lot of money, and then they hit the American dream. They made it big with their music. In fact, it was sort of a problem with a lot of their early fans, as they were considered sellouts for signing with a major label, and frankly, I would have taken that as well. You tell me that I get to be a millionaire musician, I get to do what I love and make a lot of money doing it and not have to work a regular 9 to 5, I would take that in a heartbeat. You know, I don't consider that selling out at all, because if you listen to their old, pre-sellout records and then listen to their first few albums, yeah, they sound exactly the same. Doesn't sound like they had to change their sound all that much. However, when you do make that change, when you do go from being a punk rocker to a sellout, there's a certain amount of baggage that comes with that, and you would think because of that, they would sit there and they would learn about their fellow man, about the individuals that they still want to represent, and that they would look at what is going on with the working class right now, the working class that they so desperately believe that they are supporting, and see, hey, life is really hard for just about everyone right now in the financial way of things, and maybe even the social way of things. Race relations seem like they're at an all-time low, and well, you can't really blame Trump for that anymore. He's been out of office for almost 4 years. If anything, all the recent financial and social debacles should be for your boy Biden. But here you are, acting like it's some major deal to change a line in a song about Donald Trump. And again, this shouldn't surprise anyone. It doesn't surprise me. It's Green Day. They have been very, very openly liberal for honestly as long as I've been listening to them, but it just comes off as cringy when you've got individuals who are, have such wealth and fame and probably some sort of power that clearly are so disconnected from their common man, which are the people that they claim to represent with their music. Trump's fan base is, about 50% of the United States, give or take. It's been about a 50-50 race, so that means that if you were to extrapolate that, then about, Green Day's fans would probably also be ideologically divided down the middle. Why would you run the risk of, alienating 50% of your fan base? Or is it just that you're so desperate for attention because Top 40 hasn't had a thing for guitars in, 15 years at this point? You're gonna need to do anything and everything to stay relevant, and you can't take the Kanye West side of endorsing Trump because, again, that would just be disastrous for your career after everything you said about George W. Bush, despite the fact that George Bush openly advocated against Trump. So what? Now you agree with George Bush? You made an entire album bashing him only for you guys to agree politically now? Hey, you agree with George W. Bush. I guess American Idiot's non-canon. Again, you could have just said nothing and you would not be having articles like these popping up. You wouldn't be having individuals on YouTube probably, because I bet I'm not going to be the only person to talk about this. The band's musical jab at Trump comes after the U.S. House Committee investigated the former U.S. president's efforts to overturn his 2020 election. Just like the article we read. If you guys haven't watched my video earlier, from Forbes, check that out. It's about how Google is, they're losing the DEI battle and they're making some cuts. But in that article, we saw a very ideological bend to the Forbes article with certain phrases they're using. We're seeing the same thing here. The band's musical jab at Trump comes after the U.S. House Committee investigated the former U.S. president's efforts to overturn his 2020 election. In other words, a fancy word for that being insurrection. The thing that Donald Trump has not once been charged with and in fact didn't do anything, actually did the opposite. He actively called for peaceful protests and told people to go home, said that we do not want violence until, Twitter blocked his account, they silenced him, they shadow banned him, so where most people didn't get the message. Also, it was the, again, most peaceful insurrection on the face of the planet, considering no one came with any sort of weapons. But again, we're seeing the Guardian.com use very particular language because they want to subconsciously indoctrinate you about things that didn't actually happen. They want to give you a fictional spin of events that didn't happen the way that they're trying to imply they did. Defeat on January 6, 2021 Capitol attack promoted by his supporters. Many critics are raising the flag over a possible second Trump administration, signaling the second time around could be much worse. Oh yeah, because the first time was so bad. We had no new wars, gas was cheap, I was making far more, technically by dollar amount, I'm making more now. I'm making more money now than I made under Trump, but the value of the dollar has diminished so much. I actually am bringing home in terms of what I can spend that money, as far as the spending power of that dollar, far less. The raise that I've gotten at my job, I think actually multiple raises I've gotten at my job since Biden took over, has not covered the rapid expansion of the economy since then. So sure, go ahead and talk about how it's going to be worse under a second Trump regime when things were actually pretty awesome when you break it down, when you break down the numbers his first time. I'm also wondering where they're getting this information. What sort of hardline facts do you have to believe that a second term for Donald Trump could be worse? And you don't even have to be a Trump supporter. As I've said multiple times in my videos, I'm a Vivek Ramaswamy guy. I also have quite a penchant for RFK Jr. But if I want to sit here and be an objective, news guy on YouTube, if I want to talk about journalism in an objective manner, well, I've got to be just that, objective, which means even if I would not vote for Trump, and it's probably my third choice, Vivek first, then RFK and Trump, they go back and forth. But either way, Trump's certainly not my first choice. I can at least kick back, look at all the information, and be like, yeah, the facts all sort of lie here. If the facts don't, at least the evidence does. But again, I'm not expecting multimillionaire rock stars who had to go to rehab God knows how many times to know too much about what's going on with their common man. Trump also faced criticism for using inflammatory language, such as calling his left-wing opponents vermin, resembling Adolf Hitler's rhetoric. Oh no! A word in the English language was used by two people who honestly couldn't be more different. I guess you're going to ignore all the times that, Trump supporters were called by politicians things like maggots, which is Honestly, I would much rather be Vermin than a maggot. One is notably less disgusting than another. Or, deplorables. That's, just call 50% of your common man deplorable. That's a really good look. But sure, go ahead and use the Vermin thing and equate that to Hitler. What can't you equate to Hitler nowadays? Because it's not just Trump. I'm going to be completely fair here. It's not just Trump. I remember growing up, people were saying that Obama was going to be the next Hitler as well. And while I think Obama was a terrible president, no, he was no Hitler. Because there's only one Hitler. Until you give me another U.S. politician that advocates for rounding up individuals and putting them in death camps because they want to, they believe one race is superior than the other, I don't think we've had a politician that's quite on the Hitler scale as of yet. Although with the way some of these left-leaning politicians are talking about Israel nowadays, it does sort of make you wonder which party is the one that's closer to Hitler, but I digress. Green Day is set to release a new album described as an invitation into Green Day's brain. Oh, and there it is. They're set to release a new album, and to do that, they gotta get people talking about him, because let's be real, ever since Uno, Dos, and Tres, which came out in 2013, give or take, no one's really talked about him. I mean, they've released at least one album in between this one that's coming up and Uno, Dos, Tres. I don't remember if they've released more than that, but I know there's been at least one, and I don't think it did so hot sales-wise. However, if you got a new album coming out next month and you see an opportunity to expand your audience, at least that's what you think it's going to do, by making a cringe lyric change about a topic that for some reason people tend to care about, okay, now it's all coming together. I'd be willing to bet Green Day doesn't actually have super strong opinions one way or the other because, well, I didn't see them leave the country when they said they were going to the first time he got elected. No, this is probably just a way to drum up jazz to get people to sell or buy their new album. Let me be clear, I do not care who you vote for. I don't care if you love Trump, hate Trump, love Biden, hate Biden. My channel is quite literally for anybody that wants nerdy news, whether it be about anime, music, movies. You guys hear my spiel at the end of all my videos. I'm a big music guy. I'm a musician. I can play all the key instruments in a band, and I grew up loving Green Day. In fact, Green Day's got some very, very easy songs to learn. That's how I learned to play guitar, was playing Green Day songs, because they are quite literally that simple. So, again, when you take people who have such simple songwriting, I'm expecting them to also be a bit simple-minded. But I would at least want, I would hope and pretend that they were smart enough to not alienate half their base with, I can't think of a better word beyond cringe for what this is. Now, do I care at the end of the day that they swapped out redneck with MAGA? No, not at all. I'm not a redneck now, and I wasn't a redneck when American Idiot came out. It wasn't offensive to me then. It's not offensive to me now. In fact, I did go to a redneck school. I grew up in quite the rednecky town with only about 1,000 people, and I was the weird kid who wore black and chains and whatnot. But even all the other kids, I mean, we're talking about the mid-2000s. People liked Green Day. Even the rednecks at my redneck school, they at least knew the Green Day songs when they came on pop radio. Yeah, sure, it wasn't Tim McGraw, but you telling me they didn't know the words to Basket Case? No, I'm gonna call BS on that. No one cared about this sort of stuff, and I don't care about it now, but I do find it funny that you have articles like this that very much try and shift a narrative by using, the lingo they did about how the January 6th stuff went down, and when you see when you see bands grasping to stay relevant by using the most low-hanging fruit available. But those are just my opinions. Let me know yours in the comments down below, or let me know on X, where you can find me at BoltTheWord. And please subscribe. I'm a nerdy news channel. I cover nerdy news every day, whether it be about video games, anime, movies, Magic the Gathering, you name it. Check me out on Instagram at wordsofparadise_Leon. And remember, it's all here in the nerdosphere. And this has been Words of Paradise.